Yeah. Welcome to the May 24th, 2023 meeting of the Grand County Economic Development Advisory Board. We are convening the meeting at 3:09 p.m. We have a very ambitious agenda, and a lot of good stuff to move through. So there's your welcome. Thanks for being here. And let's begin with introductions. And today, let's begin by starting with Shaylee. We'll go around the table and then we'll go to our guests online.
I'm Shaylee Bryant. I am the Chamber of Commerce representative. Advisory Board.
I'm Noel Janou. I work with the county's planning and zoning department, and I'm just here to present on the survey results.
Let's go around the table and then we'll get everyone else.
I'm Melissa Jeffers, and I'm on the Economic Development Advisory Board representing a member of the community.
Chris Wilson, member of the board here, private sector representative.
Jasmine Duncan, Mayor of Castle Valley, non-voting member of this board.
Megan McFall, Regional Small Business Development Center, representing Utah State University and their workforce development.
Hey, I'm August Graniff, Economic Development Department Director for Grand County.
Forrest Rogers, board chair. Let's start over there. Let's have you all introduce yourselves now, if you would.
Today I'm representing the Canyonlands Arts Council. But aside from that, don't forget this weekend, Arts Festival.
Then back there.
Hello, I'm Kate Jagla, the interim executive director of the MOAB 3 Alpha.
Wonderful.
Jeremy Spalding, I'm the community coordinator for Grand School District.
I am Kari Kaler, and I am the director of career and technical education for the school district and put together the proposal for the student career.
I am Melissa Bird. I am the president of the Midland School Board. And I'm Kathy Williams, and I am the vice president of the school board.
Randy Martin, Director of Business Operations for Red Taylor here in Mullen.
Linda Scovern, I'm a board member of Wabi Sabi.
Wonderful. Let's go online.
Rob just walked in.
Rob,
Yeah, Rob Walker, Board Chair of Moab Community Child Care.
wonderful. Let's go online. Let's start with Jenny from Red Hat.
Hi, my name is Jenny Gleason. I work at Red Tail, do sales, and I'm also the chair of the Travel Council Advisory Board.
Abby?
Hi, my name is Abby Taylor. I'm the executive director of Seek Haven.
And Jane?
Hi, I'm Jade Powell. I'm the deputy director at the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments and Southeastern Utah Economic Development District.
Wonderful. Vega? Vega? You there?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Biga Metzner Moab to Monument Valley Film Commission.
Is there anybody else hiding behind a screen? That's it. Well, welcome again. This is a request to hear if there are any conflicts of interest, disclosures, or ex parte communication that should be reported. Hearing none, citizens to be heard. We'll have the opportunity to hear you all in a little bit. Presentations, if any. August is going to start with a quick overview of where we are and where we're going.
Yep, so I'll just do, this is just mostly for the board as a reminder of the two kind of big processes that we're managing today is the Economic Development Advisory Board meeting May 24th. This is with regards to kind of spend down of the balance of our economic diversification funds coming from the transient room tax. Today, we're going to go over public survey results. Noel will speak to that, and we'll have folks present and also have opportunities for questions from the board on some initial programs to potentially recommend to the county commission for the allocation of those balance of those funds. Then at the June 6th meeting, we'll bring the initial consideration of those proposals to the county commission, at which point they could make a final recommendation, but also have room for until the June 20th meeting, which would be the last opportunity for the county commission to take action and get contracted on these projects to spend down economic diversification dollars. July 1st, HB 416 takes effect, and economic diversification activity will no longer be a legal use of TRT revenue. As a reminder, so long as we have a contractual obligation before that date, the county is eligible to spend transit room tax dollars towards economic diversification activity uses. As a reminder for the Economic Development Advisory Board, we also have the rural county grant funds that we'll need to spend some time finalizing. September 1st is when our current allotment of fiscal year 2023 funds must be spent by. And then the same date we have to send a expenditure report to the state. A month later, we will have to apply for the next round of funding and ask for what we want, have basically a funding proposal from the state. And then there will be the opportunity in November to apply for the competitive portion of that grant with the I think it might be, oh, excuse me, I'm messing that up. November 1st is when we have to submit a report for last year's grant, which was actually received by the city. So that might not have to be considered by this board. December 15th is when the competitive part is due. I won't spend too much time on that, just reminding the board that that's on the horizon. We're not going to spend time on that in this meeting. We're going to be very much focusing on the transit room tax dollars going towards economic diversification activities. I'll send it back to you.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Okay, we have I did invite a motion to correct or approve the April 26th, 2023 meeting minutes, which were in the board packet.
I make a motion to approve the 4/26/23 meeting minutes.
Second.
Shaylee and Chris, thank you. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Erin is not with us.
I try to get her the call number.
Okay. So, done. Next item, update on economic development strategic plan RFP process. For those of you who were at last month's meeting, there was, I came into the meeting with an incomplete understanding of how the process for the RFP was changing and the outcome that we were intending and the amount of funds to be spent. That was a result of my not being fully aware of the impact that Ben Alter's departure would have on staff, and the fact that with an opportunity to truly invest in a robust strategic planning process, the county decided that we should go big rather than go modest. So we're gonna go big and then we'll go home after we do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
No, I think that, yeah, there's just that kind of miscommunication that was apparent last meeting. And so the full next steps are that we are going for the full budgeted amount of $150,000 budget planning process, 100,000 coming from diversification dollars, 50,000 from tourism dollars, as it's going to be kind of a holistic planning process covering the entirety of what we work on as a department, and trying not to silo either of those processes. We're in the middle of that. We've been doing interviews to the finalists who have been proposing. Melissa, is there anything that you want to kind of report back as the Economic Development Board representative in that process?
It is a thorough, very intentional process with really great candidates. And I think that that outcome will be a very high quality outcome.
Beautiful. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Anything else? Any other questions about the process? So the next steps will be scoring. Is that correct? Scoring.
So we scored
You scored.
and we're in the interview phase.
Wonderful. Very
So
good.
we'll be reaching out to the references, the client references for the finalists. And the selecting committee will be making a decision as soon as possible. And then same thing, it has to be contracted by the June 20th County Commission meeting in order for us to, that to be an eligible use of economic diversification TRT dollars.
Any questions about that process? Where we're going? It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Lisa, thanks for the time you're giving to participate in that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then we move to the most exciting part of this agenda, which is the proposed expenditures of economic development TRT funds.
So we, as a part of trying to do as robust of a kind of a public input process as possible, although we had to move very quickly, given the fact that state law changes July 1st. We posted a survey on Grand County Connects, which is the planning and zoning's kind of primary public input portal. Used social media posts and email communications echoed by the Chamber of Commerce to get this out to the community. At that point, we kind of had 4 primary project proposals that we were considering that we wanted the public's input on. One was supporting the Moab Community Resource Center. One was putting money into a revolving loan fund that would be administered by the Southeast Utah Association of Local Governments. Another one was increasing the support for the USU Small Business Development Center at the Moab campus, which we've already supported. And so the intention there was to extend that support. And then there was also consideration to support the administration of the Wildcat Micro Fund. And those will all be presented on today and have an opportunity for questions and answers. And then we also left it open for if there's other projects we weren't aware of as a board, as a staff, as a commission, to be funded by these dollars on a relatively short time frame. So simultaneously an input and kind of a quasi proposal instrument. And Noel from the Planning and Zoning Department did a really good job of collating those responses. And so I'll let her speak to that, kind of what the data shows a little bit here.
Yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but we had people rank these 4 projects 1 to 5, with 5 being the most support, 1 being the least support. So you can see kind of the outcomes on this screen. And then actually on the next page, it's the same data, just shown in a slightly different way. To kind of compare, you can see there's for the Moab Community Resource Center, by and far, the most like 5 supports. But then for the revolving loan fund and for the USU Small Business Center, there is kind of mixed results. And what I did to see if I could come up with like a top to bottom ranking is I just gave each like 1 through 5 value that, and then I totaled up the total responses that they had. And it turned out that the USU Small Business Development Center actually scored higher, but I think it's important to note that there was a lot more like middle of the road 3 votes for the USU Small Business Center, where for the revolving loan fund, there's actually more 5 votes, but then also more 1 vote. So it's, you know, you take it all with a grain of salt. But yeah, so that's kind of the numbers part of it. And then on the last slide, there's just kind of a list of some of the other projects that were proposed in the survey, and a lot of you are here. But yeah, that's kind of that.
So I took that kind of list of open proposals and reached out to folks who had indicated that they had a project, and those that were interested in kind of pursuing funding via proposing today to start with. I reached out to, and now we're where we are. So I guess, are there any questions from the board on its initial survey results? We can also come back to these at another time and hold as much time for presentations as possible.
I think to Noel's point about the revolving loan fund and increased support, they both had 40% plus or minus of the respondents to those questions
Mhm.
in the favorable or most favorable. So thank you for pointing out that they were very close.
Yeah.
In the aggregate, they're very close in terms of responses. Even though if you look at the pictures, sometimes they don't show that, concentration around the 40%. So thanks for doing that work.
Yeah.
Kate, you may not have been here when we went through the order.
Oh, I was here.
You were here. Okay, so you're prepared.
Yes.
Why don't you come up and join us here, please?
In August, I sent you the presentation through your email.
Yeah, let me grab that.
I'll give you an assignment in about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay, great.
Yeah, so we should have time for everybody to have 5 minutes of presentation and 5 minutes of follow-up question. Yeah. All right.
Great. Hi, I'm Kate Jagla. I'm representing the Moab Free Health Clinic and the Moab Community Resource Center on our proposal for supporting education, workforce, and entrepreneurship. I guess you'd maybe ask, how does economic diversification connect to this project? The clinic purchased the former USU Moab campus, the intention of developing it into a hub to address social determinants of health. Social determinants of health can be grouped into 5 domains, and economic stability is one of those. Next slide. So this is the south building on the campus. It's one of 3 buildings on the property, and it's currently built to house one organization, the USGS. And in order to increase this building's capacity to house more organizations from a diverse set of industries, we need to make infrastructure improvements, including re-roofing, an additional fire exit, additional bathrooms. We continue to receive applications on a weekly basis to join the campus. And during the recruitment of organizations, we ran into the need for individuals to have space for space to create, from graphic design to prototyping. And through this funding, we would turn this unfinished space into a work skills training and maker space, especially for Moab's entrepreneurs. During the pilot period, our campus manager would market the space and survey the community to ensure the space will be used most effectively. All buildings approved for this funding will be self-sustaining, as the clinic has set up a yearly reserve for each building. Each building has a cost pool for maintenance and capital expenditures. Next slide. So this is the west building on the property. As you see, we've already made renovations to this building. I just wanted to show a couple of examples here: our conference room, our main lobby area, and of course the outside. If you go to the next slide. The west building houses 15 partner organizations, and they're listed right here. Many of these organizations previously did not have office space, could not afford office space, or worked from home, so that prohibited expansion of their organizations. All organizations contribute a cost share, which is below market rate, to cover operations of the building. We're particularly excited about new programs and organizations, including the Grand County School District Career and Student Success Center, which is planning to come in August, and the Grand County Public Library Teen Center, set to create new jobs in the area. This funding will support a 3-year pilot for shared office space for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship organizations, particularly those organizations supporting providing resources and guidance to underserved populations, such as the Women's Business Center of Utah, providing guidance to women with the goal of establishing more women-owned businesses in the area. We have planned surveying of partner organizations. We collect data for all of our grants, so we have a robust system for that. And really to demonstrate the impact of co-locating organizations and determining the health of organizations, patients, clients, and the local economy. As you see here, we are going solar. We have secured approximately $475,000 worth of solar funding, which will reduce operational costs for the campus and decrease electrical bills by $14,000 per year. Through this funding, we would re-roof the west building in order to install the solar. These cost savings will maintain cost share rates and allow organizations room to expand their programming. Next slide. So we also have an undeveloped parcel on the property, which brings about future housing development. So this is about an 1,800 square foot parcel, and it has the potential to have 3 stories of housing. But first, we need to get property and flood level surveying done and Pat Creek mitigation. I don't know if anyone's been there, but the Pat Creek is really cutting in over there. This funding will also benefit us in terms of the preliminary work for architectural drawings and allow us to apply for future funding opportunities. A lot of the grants I've been looking at have required this preliminary work before you can even make it to the next round. We've had plans for the housing to benefit volunteers like AmeriCorps Vistas coming to the area, as well as transitional housing for those who accept jobs in the area, but may not be able to move to the area because they can't find housing in the interim period. The last item on the budget is parking pavement improvements. We have so many organizations on this campus, and you can probably see through some of these pictures that the parking situation and it's kind of falling apart and patched together right now. And that would also give us opportunities to bring organizations who need more untraditional space, like Moab Community Cycles, who needs outdoor space in order to grow their programming.
Thanks, Kate. Questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Yes.
Thanks. So how do you choose which organizations you support, basically, would be the question. Like, is everyone that you're supporting providing office space, are they all nonprofits, mission-driven organizations, or some of them private sector organizations? If so, how do you ensure that they really deserve support, subsidized office space, and things like that?
Yeah, so if we go back to that second slide. So the main focus is based on addressing social determinants of health. And so that's like access to healthcare, access to educational resources, access to housing resources. And there's these 5 domains that cover a broader range. I mean, people need more help than just their physical health care. They need a broad range of options to keep them healthy. So we have nonprofits, we have for-profits. It's really based on if they can fit within this scope, which is pretty broad, but we've already collaborated with several organizations and we see so much collaboration that can happen already at the campus.
Very nice.
Is there a specific amount that you're asking for? Or is it a broad fund? You got some really awesome projects going. It feels really big.
Yes, it is very big.
I can pull up we have a proposal.
So I divided it up into several categories focused on the different buildings and the overall campus. So kind of divided by South Building, West Building with those 15 partner organizations, the Southwest parcel, which is the room for housing development, and then overall campus improvements. I did ask for a large amount, but that's what I typically do in grant applications.
Is there a priority?
The priority, I would say, is getting the solar in and reducing operational expenses and getting some of these infrastructure improvements done. $475,000 is a lot of money to go away if we can't get the roof re-roofed.
And that would be for the West Building.
That'd be for the West Building.
So be able to get the solar, it's 100, you need 121.
Yes.
And then for the shared office space for the entrepreneurship organizations, that basically covers the rental or the lease cost for that office space,
Yes.
for the one office space.
On that office space, is there collaboration with the USU Small Business Program?
There could be.
Got it.
Yes, we would love to bring some of the USU programming down in the downtown area again, especially to target our patient population and client population who may not have the time or resources to get up to the South Campus.
So beyond the roof, what would be the next priority for you?
I would say the South Building, because we can't really move forward without some of these infrastructure improvements and bringing more organizations in. This building could potentially have 4 or 5 organizations in it, but right now it doesn't have enough bathrooms to code it, for building code purposes, to make it into a place where you can have multiple organizations. So it's kind of wasted space right now, especially that unfinished picture I showed you. It's just there, and organizations could be in that building within a couple of months.
And that would be this roof, exterior paint, fire exit. And the
Yes.
restrooms, finished space, space
Mhm.
rental.
So I'd say the South and West are the priority. It'd be great to start looking into the preliminary stages for housing developments.
On the southwest parcel.
Yes, but I would say the first 2 categories are the most important.
Does any of this have the ability like to be done without any of this grant money?
Well, we'd have to look for other money, basically. This would be a great source to get everything moving quickly, rather than getting delayed by a grant that might not come through in 9 to 12 months.
Does somebody on staff do all the property management, or do you contract?
So we have a campus manager who does all the property management, and we also have a facility maintenance person who does all the cleaning and landscaping and maintenance.
Then can I ask a follow-up with regards to the grant from, is it from Rocky Mountain Power for the solar?
We have 2 grants, so we have one in about $383,000 from the Rocky Mountain Blue Sky program. And then we have $97,000 from the Department of Cultural and Community Engagement.
And can you explain, can you just underscore the value of what the funds here would be paying for that those aren't? And if that project could proceed without these dollars?
There's a potential for it not to proceed because re-roofing is absolutely necessary, especially usually re-roofing and solar projects go hand in hand to make sure that you're not having extra expenses later. So it could potentially go on, but then we come 5 years later and then we end up with the cost of taking all that solar off and then re-roofing and just extra costs, which could be it'd be bad for operational.
So to be clear, that's the grants cover the actual solar installation. And the request is for finishing the roof underneath that,
Yes,
so it doesn't have to get done a second time.
yes.
Okay. I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay, you did well under the 5-minute target, and our questions took you over the 10 minutes, so that's. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Alright, who's next?
Who's next? Grant County High School, I'm sorry, USU Moab Business Development Center.
That would be you, Megan, I think.
Yeah, so I just found out I was doing this like 5 minutes before I left my office, so. So, the Small Business Development Center, was, essentially reestablished here about 18 months ago when I took over. It had been vacant for, a considerable amount of time. Many of you remember Beth, McHugh, I believe was her last name, but sat in the position for a long time. She did an amazing job. Her job was part-time. And that was where we kind of came into some challenges in refilling that position. They did fill it with somebody for a short term, but they never felt successful or felt like they could be successful in that position and ultimately ended up leaving that position, which is where SBDC redrew our boundaries. And redid the districting. So that's kind of where I came into play. I've been working in the area for just over 18 months now. Grand County itself takes up about 65 to 67% of my time, and I'm already booked out by 2 weeks. And usually it's a 4-week booking. Got people that are like shaking their head, like, yes, they know. I currently work 50 hours a week. That just kind of gives you an idea of the size and scope. And I work 10-hour days. I work 9 to 7. And so physically I can no longer carry that load. Thankfully, you guys have been amazing as far as funding a full-time position here for 3 years. That position is both essentially a repeat of my position. So it's both small business development as well as workforce development. And so they will work on both ends of the spectrum. And it's important that they work together and work hand in hand for business development as well as workforce development, because they affect each other so drastically. The need here is, I'll give you an idea of the number of businesses. I have over 1,000 businesses listed, and I'm only working with 213. I've done no outreach, and every single one of them has had to come to me. And I've had to do most of everything remotely. By having somebody physically here and meeting one-on-one, we increase the capital infusion by grants, by loans themselves, by all of the different resources that you can see for businesses. We sit and we write business plans, we write grants, we do training, we go through anything a business is lacking or in need of. We spend on average, my time with a business that I'm working with right now is 21 hours in order to move them on to the next level. One of the reasons why this position is so important, one of the worst things we can do with a business, especially a startup, is hand them some money to go into business and not have them have the support and the backing to be successful. And we see that a lot, especially in areas that are underserved by these type of services. So ensuring that we have somebody here to be able to serve Grand County. And it was highly effective not having somebody fully here. And I try my best, but I tell you right now, I'm falling short, woefully short. To be able to serve that, because like I said, there's nothing worse than a business going out of business when they didn't need to. They just needed that additional support, whether that is an additional training, just one-on-one mentorship, things like that. And that's what we provide, everything from the startup all the way to working with the currently building and expanding businesses to develop out and get additional funding or build workforce or additional money to build a building, which is what we're doing with a lot of businesses right now. So anyway, that's kind of where things are for that. That the additional money would allow us to support that position for longer. Like I said, we're guaranteed right now for 3 years. But being that soft funds, we always want to make sure that we can hold that position here as long as we possibly can, and carry that forward. The initial proposal was 5 years for that position, so that we could hopefully at that point in time have it sustainable on its own. Were we cutting it to 3 years, it's possible that we won't have enough time to make that sustainable. So.
Questions?
You want to speak to the Wildcat microphone at all?
Sure. So the Wildcat Microfund, the positions, they're kind of hand in hand. Essentially, the Wildcat Microfund is a fund that has been operating out of Ogden, Weaver State for about 5 years. It's worked in a 5-county area. We have the opportunity to expand it into our region if we can get the staffing support to do the heavy lifting, essentially. We were able to get $1.2 million from America First to back that statewide expansion of the Wildcat Fund. Now we have to figure out how to do back the administration of that fund. What that fund is businesses, specifically, it's seed money for startups. If you've ever been a startup and you tried to go get a loan or get your seed money, it's very, very difficult, almost impossible these days with everything that's going on with the banking system. But what that is they go in and they apply. Once they're scored with their idea, it's scored. If they hit the score, and off the top of my head, I want to say it's 80%, then they're referred to the local SBDC or the local consultant in the area. So that they can work one-on-one. We create a business model Canva, which is a version of the business plan. We also create a pitch deck with them so that they can go and now pitch for essentially the equivalent of a grant of up to $3,000. We create a budget, how they're going to spend that money. The cool part about this fund is that once they've been accepted on that first application, they're not competing against anybody else. They're competing with themselves. And so if they don't make the minimum scoring to get the funding on the pitch deck the first time, they get all of their feedback from the judges, and then they go back and they make those improvements, and they go back and repitch until they're able to make those minimum. The cool part about the way this fund's set up is once they have shown documentation and that they're good stewards of their business and they spent the money properly, they can actually go back, update their business model Canva, their pitch, and repitch and get an additional $3,000 to take their business to the next level. And you can do that up to 3 times. So they can get up to $9,000 to kind of kickstart their business and moving that forward up until they're making $5,000 in revenues a month. And so that makes a huge difference, especially for some of our home-based business, some of our businesses getting right off the ground, especially the fact that that does not have to be paid back. So a lot of times that'll be what they need to get started, show proof of concept, get things really moving, and then we can refer them into other projects like the revolving loan or SBA or whatever in order to move them on to the next slide if they need additional funding. But a lot of times what we're seeing that those that we're able to get through, they have enough footing off their ground that they can bootstrap it from there. So that is that.
Thank you.
You have essentially 2 different choices, right? If it's
Yeah.
that you're putting forward.
Yes.
You can't expand your service without more people,
Exactly.
and you can't expand the Wildcat microloan program without more staff, without more promotions.
We
without
would need
more-
somebody, and right now the workload fills, the workload and the time and effort would fill the full-time person that we just hired for that position at their 40 hours. And so in order to expand the microloan fund, we would have to fill in additional staffing in order to officially launch that and bring that down. And so this would be an additional person to fill that gap.
And what's your sense of the market demand for that, or the need for that?
I have
The
50
interest
businesses on a
parties?
wait list.
Many?
I have 50 businesses on a wait list,
That's
and they're chopping at the bit, and I get a phone call about every day asking when we're gonna release.
okay.
So, yeah.
And this is for Grand County businesses.
Yeah. Grand County is probably the most ready to go in, and if I had the staffing to back up building those canvas, because they're different than what most businesses are used to. In fact, we have a lot of businesses that don't have business plans in place. But if I had the staffing to back that up and released everybody, it would overwhelm the microfund system they have set up in Weaver State.
And then the additional request for SBDC for 2 more years would be 200 grand.
Exactly.
And then for an additional staff person for the Wildcat. What would that request look like?
If we did a part-time position, then it would be an additional 40,000 a year for the part-time person.
What does it look like for the funding? Because it sounds like on the small business development expansion of position, you have funding currently for 3 years of that. And then, so if we were to fund 200,000, that gives us 2 more years. And then what would be the funding after that, or would just you'd spend that time looking? 'Cause
We would spend that time building up that position to be sustainable on its own. And as we did interviews and we went through that, we made it very clear that that's a, and in fact, it's written into their job description that it is part of their job to create the required funding to sustain that position.
So they get grants and things like that. to fund themselves.
Exactly. And the other cool part about that is as we're getting grants and things like that over the next 5 years, and say a portion of that grant would pay part of their salary, then we would tack that on to the back end. So that 5 years could really, if we're getting grants as we're going, could actually be expanded out to 10. or whatever that looks like, if we're really good stewards for the funds, we would start from day one, trying to figure out ways that we can really expand that money, and that could really, it'd be pushed out to significantly longer, just depending on the grant cycles and things like that. But as was mentioned earlier, there's not a guarantee on grants and things, so we want to make sure that we are sustainable, and on average, it takes about 5 years to make an SBDC center sustainable.
Would that be the same for the micro loan fund, the wildcat fund?
It would be.
For their position.
Yeah, it would be.
Melissa,
Is the program scalable, meaning if the county commission gave you additional dollars beyond what you had requested?
Mhm.
Is it the resources that you're lacking that would be able to expand that program to serve more small businesses with the pent up demand? Or is it sort of like, we really are managing all that we can manage if we get those resources?
No.
Or is it if you give us additional resources?
If
could
we
blow
had the
program?
additional resources, like, for example, if you chose to fund a full-time person in the micro fund versus expanding the extra 2 years for the other, then we would have 2 full-time business consultants for X amount of time here within the area, and then that would just serve more businesses within that scope of work. And so it's just a matter of deciding what is the important aspect, or how to make that priority. But yeah, we definitely, if we had a full-time person, it would definitely fill that need, or we could fill that need for sure.
any other questions? No?
An update on hiring process to the public.
Update on the hire process for the SBDC. We have hired a full-time SBDC person. They will start on June 1st. I start training them. They have a great business background. As far as their knowledge, their education, they've themselves built a couple business. The name is Kima Johnson. We've completed paperwork as of today, and be able to move forward with that. So super excited to have her in position. Her law background will be extremely beneficial as we move forward in writing like LLC partnerships and recruiting risk management and things like that for businesses, because that's something that is highly needed. So it brings a new aspect to my team that we didn't have before. So I have somebody that's really great with marketing. I have a huge finance background, and then she brings kind of a law background too. And so it just adds a huge asset to the team. So we're able to be a more full, robust center for Grant County.
Great. Congratulations on getting somebody like that.
She's super excited. She'll be amazing. She'll be really good.
Well, she probably already is.
She is in this position. She'll be wonderful.
Okay, thanks so much. Ready to move on to Grand County. Grand County
Yeah.
Career, Grand County High School.
I
Career,
think we're at the revolving fund actually.
I'm sorry,
Revolving loan funds.
I'm sorry. We are. It's just not in here. Okay. Jade,
And to be clear, we're asking Jade basically to answer any questions about the rotating loan fund. They're not pitching us. Giving money to the rotating loan fund, I think, is an obvious way to put unallocated dollars if we haven't figured out it's like a really high value project to ensure that this economic diversification money circulates through the community in perpetuity. So Jade, if you could speak to kind of what that rotating loan fund looks like, perhaps for other communities, how you administer it on their behalf. And yeah, we can take, and then you can take any questions that the board has for you. And introduce yourself and your organization probably also.
Yeah, thank you. Unfortunately, I am not the revolving loan fund program manager. I'm just the deputy director. So I know enough to probably give a high level overview of what our revolving loan fund is, but the nitty gritty details is Camille Otto, and she will be back on Monday actually from a 3-month maternity leave. So any specific questions, I might have to get back to you on that. But basically,
And can you, Jade, can you remind us what organization you're with?
so I'm with the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, who is also the Economic Development District for Southeastern Utah. So that includes Carbon, Emery, Grand, and San Juan counties. We've been running, involved with economic development in those 4 counties for the last 50 years or so. since we became in existence. We're one of 7 AOGs in the state of Utah, which is just a regional government. We run anything from the food bank to the senior centers, to aging programs, poverty alleviation programs, things of that nature, as well as doing economic development and just general planning for the communities. And so we've been running a revolving loan fund now for probably about 30 years or so. It's upwards of probably about $3-4 million now, with our last big chunk coming in through the CARES Act funds that we have. Those funds are it's kind of a little bit complicated on how our funds work. So we have some funds that are open to the whole region as a whole, that any business in Carbon, Emery, Grand, or San Juan counties can apply for and take advantage of those. However, like August mentioned, we do manage some community funds. We have San Juan County. They had their own revolving loan fund. I don't know when, probably in the early 2000s, maybe even the 90s. They did not want to manage it anymore, and so they approached the AOG to manage their revolving loan fund. So we've been managing theirs, and same thing with the town of Monticello. They had their own revolving loan fund at one point, and now we manage it. And so with those funds specifically for those communities, for the county and for Monticello, we manage their funds. It follows the same RLF plan that we have, that's been approved and adopted by our board, and also approved by the Economic Development Administration at the federal level, the EDA, whom we report to. So we could either do a couple options. We can either operate, should Grand County want to put some of their funds into a revolving loan fund, we would operate it just like we do a Monticello or San Juan County fund, where those funds are strictly set aside just for the businesses in Grand County. However, they would still follow our, when I say ours, but it would be the RLF plans that's been approved by the EDA, their policies and procedures, review committee, and then with board approval. Or if we needed to make it look a little bit different, we could do that too. We're open to whatever. At the end of the day, it's Grand County's funds, and so we'll do whatever that Grand County wants to do, just as long as our executive board, that's made up of a mayor and commissioner from all 4 of our counties, ultimately feels good about it and approves it.
Thanks, Jay. I think my main question for you is one of contract execution. So in order for us as Grand County to be able to allocate funds within the limits of changing state code, we need to bring that to the county commission for a vote on the 20th of next month. So I would assume it would have to go before the RLF board, or however that works on your side beforehand. Do you see any impediments administratively from the AOG's perspective to getting to yes on your side of that?
No, we actually have an RLF meeting tomorrow. I was going to report on what the outcome kind of this meeting is. Now it's not a motion on the agenda, so the RLF couldn't approve anything or improve to move forward or anything, but at least pitch it to the board members, and then we have the capability to do email votes should we have to get in that quick of needing a response. We can do that. And then for administration things, that would probably be up to negotiations on how the AOG will incur costs on managing the fund. And so what would that be? What would those costs look like? I can tell you from the Monticello, San Juan County side of things. Like I said, it follows our RLF plan, which is we take a percentage of the interest earned off of the loan. So not off of the capital, but off of the interest that we earn back off of the revolving loan funds to pay some of our admin fees.
Well, Jade, is there a minimum capital investment?
Yeah, so our minimum, now board has discretion to waive these thresholds, and we've seen it in the past. But typically our minimum is about $10,000 request, with our maximum being $150,000 with that, we ask for every 25,000 that a business is asking for, has at least one job created and or retained.
And that's from the business standpoint. Was your question from the agency standpoint as a contributor?
Yeah.
Do you have like a minimum that you would need from us to make that a viable program, I guess?
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. We haven't had much discussion on that. I don't foresee if we do, it would be very minimal. But I don't have an answer on that.
I have a question. What, do you know for the 3 to 4 million that you guys have that is available to 4 counties, including Grand County right now? How much of that is being utilized? Like, are you at capacity? Do you need more money, or are people, is there money on the table that businesses in Grand County could access that currently aren't accessing?
So we, of that, now that I'm thinking about, I'll have to go back and look at the month, how much money, but I believe it's about 3 million. So I might have misspoke when I said 4 million. But of that, I believe we have about 300,000 or so that's not committed to businesses. And so it is pretty utilized. Just off the top of my head, I would say probably 30 to 40% of our clients are actually Grand County businesses right now.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you very much.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. If you have any more, just let me know. August also sits on our revolving loan fund board, so he can maybe answer some if I'm not readily available. So
Yeah, I'll be at that meeting tomorrow as well, so.
thank you.
Okay,
Okay, we're having a climate adjustment in the room. And for the minutes, note that Karen walked in about 20 minutes ago. So we're glad you're here. We've got a whole team from the Grand County School District.
We do. I asked for lots of support and they all showed up. So it's great. So the Grand County School District Student Career and Success Center was born out of a need for serving our students who, for whatever reason, we are losing along the way. So if you could go to the next slide. You have the proposal, and so you have all the information in the proposal. This is just the Reader's Digest version. So since 2014, our graduation rate, we've seen a huge decrease. In 2020, there was a slight bump. And the reason for that was because during COVID, we were held harmless. And so anybody, like we have kids right now who are like, we're trying to get to the finish line. But when we were held harmless in 2020, everyone made it past the finish line. But that's not how it always goes, right? And so in 2022, we saw our lowest graduation rate since 2014. And so if we have 100 students who graduate, our graduation rate is 74.3%. That means that we're losing 25 to 27 students a year. And those students are hanging out at the skate park, maybe working in businesses in town, but aren't really gaining any skill set or education toward their future. So go ahead to the next slide. This is just the rates over the last few years compared to the state rate. And so you can see there was that bump in 2020. And like I said, that was the whole harmless bump. And then again, we're going down. Go ahead to the next slide. And this is just a chart on the same slide, really cute, but we can keep going. This is just a chart of the the students who would be eligible to participate in the Student Career and Success Center. So these are the 12th graders. There's 19. Students need to earn 27 credits to graduate. This is why I have my help.
Yeah, and we're shifting to a semester system. Next year, it'll change our graduation credits a little bit, and so that could be anywhere. The lowest we can go is 24 credits, meeting the state standards. And we can get up to, we probably wouldn't go any higher than 28 credits, probably around 26, maybe.
Yeah,
So.
If you're making a comment, I think appreciate you say your name and who you're with.
Okay.
No problem. I just wanted to, because the people watching online and we do the minutes for, no, it's just
That last comment was brought to you by Derek Cook. He's the school counselor in the high school.
awesome. Appreciate it.
And for clarification, I'm Kari Kaler. I'm the Director of Career and Technical Education at the school district.
Awesome.
So what's most striking to me is that when you look at the eighth grade numbers, 15 students in eighth grade have failed 5 or more, or 3 or more classes in the eighth grade right now. And so these are the kids that are coming up. So ideally, the numbers, like as you go lower in grades, would get smaller and smaller, but they're not, except for that 7th grade bump. Not really sure, you know, we're sort of working through all of this. But when we look at the 14-year trend of graduation rates going down, and we look at what's going on and who would be eligible now, we've got to do something different within the school district. So if you go ahead and go to the next slide. So why does this matter? In thinking about the social determinants of health, which Kate mentioned, one of the 5 sort of pillars is educational access and support, right? And so when students graduate and have a career, they're that much more likely to, 1, stay in school if they're interested in a career, and 2, be more successful once they graduate. And that carries over to the economic sort of vitality of the community. And so this is why it's important. And the next slide, I think, is another, so this is our path to a solution. The support that we're proposing is for the Student Career and Success Center, similar to alternative high school, but the difference is that there's 2 goals for the Student Career and Success Center. If you go ahead to the next slide, it should be our mission and vision. So the mission is simple, just high school completion and career acquisition. Where the proposed center is going to be is next to the alternative high school in the Community Resource Center. And so the Student Career and Success Center itself could be a path to graduation. If a student comes in severely credit deficient, then we may refer them right next door to the adult ed program. Or the other possibility is thinking about these 8th graders who failed 3 or more classes for more than 2 semesters. Maybe they're not ready to be successful in the high school, but there is a process for reintegration. So the Student Career and Success Center is sort of like path to graduation, stopgap, or path to adult ed. Whatever they do, the idea is high school completion and career acquisition. So to provide hands-on, standard-based, personalized learning, so to help students navigate the educational system and set them up for success and work readiness into the future. Next slide. So WestEd is a big organization that looks at education throughout the country and does different studies about education. I included this slide because I think it's really important. When you look at the number of jobs in 2021 that you needed no formal education for, and you look over on the right-hand side, only 17% of them will provide a living wage. When students tell me, why should I graduate high school? I say, look at this slide. If you have your high school diploma or an equivalent, 70% of the jobs that you could qualify for will earn you a living wage. This is very important to our economy, right? 30 kids, 25 kids are running around the community every year that haven't even made it to that high school diploma or equivalent. This is huge for our community. So anyway, I just included that slide because I thought it was important. Okay, these are our goals. The first year goal is to serve 25 students who are successful, meaning they got their diploma in some way, shape, or form, and they have the skill set, career readiness to go on to either business in the community, higher education, 1, 3, or 4-year degrees. So that's the goal. And then year 2, we would be serving 35 to 40 students, and years 4 to 5, we would be serving 50 to 60 students per year with those 2 goals in mind.
Sorry, we're about 6.5 minutes.
Oh my goodness, okay.
You got
We're gonna do
budget?
community resource center. Next slide, next slide, next slide. You can keep going. Oh, there's the request. So the total budget, the school district is gonna provide $171,000. We're requesting $221,000 to meet the total budget of $321,500. The school district, I'm the CTE director. I'm going to take on the position of the director of the SCSC as well, because the CTE funding from the state will cover one alternative school within the whole system. And so the $221,500 would allow us to run the program next year
And so you have received $100,000?
from the school, the commitment from the school district.
Yeah,
Then how's it covered forward after that?
Yeah, how's it sustainable?
There is a plan to, right now, we're looking into Stronger Communities grant through USBE. And so we hope to get this year covered and then look into Stronger Communities, which is another 2-year grant, and then look for additional funding resources, either from the district. So in theory, the students that we serve will generate WPU, and so that WPU will go back into the district's coffers.
What's
so-
WPU?
Oh, sorry,
The
sorry.
layperson?
It's weighted pupil unit, so it's the amount of money that having a student present and having them attend school goes to the school district
From the state
from the state.
in terms of funding.
Yes.
And how
yes.
much is, I hate to say this, but a student worth a year?
In the state.
Yeah, in the state, so the WPU, the weighted pupil unit value for this school year is, does anybody know off the top of their head?
Like 14,
4,600, something around that.
School district.
4,600, so 30 students times 4,600.
Yeah, and it's relative, right? Because what I'm hoping for is we get the students and they become engaged and they become successful in school. And so maybe they're partially enrolled with us and then they take career and technical education courses at the high school. So the amount of WPU isn't exactly 30 times 4,600, but there is a hope that we start to recoup some of that funding that we're losing from the students. So with all of those different funding sources, ideally we'd fund the whole program. Eventually, but like it takes a little seed money to sort of get that going. Other questions?
Melissa,
My question is for August. Out of curiosity,
Sure.
with this proposal, for example, or the community resource center, if it didn't fall in line necessarily with what we decided was economic diversification, would it qualify under the rural competitive grants that we would be applying for? Is this the type of program that we could put forward for that funding, or the rural grant funding?
A good question. Probably. But for both of those, when would the school district need that commitment or this program to launch the next calendar or the next school year?
The program's going to launch, this district has committed to that,
Yeah.
so as soon as possible.
Sure. So in the case of the proposal to have alternative funding sources, the Rural County Opportunity Grant, we wouldn't hear back until the end of the year. And the Rural County Grant, we wouldn't have that money until the fall, and so.
Devil's advocate question though,
Sure.
if they're moving forward anyway.
Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't necessarily need the resources in hand to move forward. They would just need to know that there was a potential opportunity for them to apply for additional resources.
Yeah. it's a
Is that
good question.
correct?
But they're not guaranteed.
No.
I would want to
Absolutely.
follow up with the state just to clarify kind of what is eligible. This is one of those that seems like, of course, this would support our community's economic well-being. But it's not like, I would put it under workforce development is how I would frame it, which is explicitly under the state's allowable
Yeah.
uses for that
It
purpose.
feels like it would be under their mandate, and that graph is alarming.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Here, here.
It's like
We
that,
find other funding as well.
Grant funding is how much?
So the competitive grant is up to $600,000 on an annual basis. We've received the max amount twice, but that was 300,000 because they received so many applications. So it's, we haven't received 300,000 for that. We get 200 grand a year from Rural County Grant funding. And so that would be, if this didn't get funded out of TRT economic diversification, that could be something that this board could consider as a part of their request to the state in September for next year's Rural County Grant money. Would be my answer to those questions.
so any final questions? Kari, I think we'll have some more to do things.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wabi Sabi is next. Thank you, district team.
So we have a school board meeting. We're.
You're all good.
So riveting.
Any excuse.
No.
Use any
I'm
excuse.
really excited.
I see you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know why you're on a different.
Right here, just jump in there.
You want me to chop here then?
Let's go. I'm sorry, Nita, we have one presenter just before you.
Oh, okay.
Apologize.
That's
You
okay.
can stay, you can sit there.
You can sit.
Rock.
We know.
Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, let's do it.
You want me to pull up your written proposal?
No,
Definitely
not.
Okay.
First rule presenting, right? Don't make people read something you're trying to talk to.
Hey guys, so I didn't expect I'd be back in front of you so soon. But you guys keep putting more money towards economic development, and I have ideas for how we can spend that for childcare for your consideration. Want to make sure I don't come off greedy. You guys have been more than generous to support our organization. But with that, I have a new project for you, and I think is really attractive on a relative basis. It's also something that we don't need a lot of money to get off the ground and to move forward. So how should I begin with it? So I don't know if everyone read the proposal. So what are we talking about? The best case scenario here is we all know we need more childcare capacity in town. We have a wait list for over 20 kids for our infant care center alone, and other centers in town have wait lists as well. And to add capacity is very difficult and very expensive because it involves, purchasing a commercial building. We managed to find an existing church that wasn't being used, and we were able to retrofit that. A lot of the childcare in town is provided by individuals in their homes. And the state has, like a lot of states in the country, exceptions to allow for in-home licenses to increase childcare capacity. So in your home, it's a lot easier to get a license than if you were to start a commercial center. So what we're talking about is we want to encourage the development of those. That was the initial plan, I don't know, a year and a half ago when I met with August, and we're talking about how we could, do some of childcare. And then we met with providers, and what we found is that they were really in rough shape, and it wasn't going to be good for us to try to convince someone else to get into the profession when everybody else who was already in it was kind of stressed out. So we had to make the job more attractive, and we think we're doing that. We have 12 caregivers now on our staff in less than a year, and we expect that to grow. We have a few existing locations that we're working with. We're working with Sago Lily, trying to turn them into increase their hours of enrollment. Working with Little Sprouts, which is a home center, trying to help her go from 8 to 16. We're working with Montessori to go from 25 to 30. Our center, we're working to go from 12 to 15. We're just trying to eke out efficiency gains wherever that's a business term, my background, trying to get how can we get capacity. The holy grail in this situation is if we can convince individuals to start an in-home childcare business in their homes. That is a hard thing to do because it's highly invasive in one's life, and it's also expensive. So we can't do anything about it being invasive, but a lot of people are called to childcare as a calling and want to do it. So I think there's that. If we can kind of help make the hurdles easier, and there are two main hurdles that we're making easier. One is that there's a lot of forms to fill out, and it's hard and it's scary. It's starting a business, but maybe a little harder than an average business you'd start, right? So our Helping Hands program will support that, and our staff. We have an awesome director, Nikki Wilson, who is our center's every 15 minutes, there's what's happening, and it's dialed in. And so we can bring that to the table, as well as our staffing support if they're sick or anything like that. And then the other aspect is that to start a new center, I had no idea. When I started this, I figured how much does a few cribs cost and cots, but there's lots of items that need to be purchased. Typically it's around $600 a child is what they say. So times 16 kids, which is the max you can have in an in-home center, that's $10,000. We start out with 8, and then try to work up to the 16, the jump, and then those jumps are because 1 staff member versus 2 staff members. In addition, you need an outdoor fenced area and some playground equipment and things like that. And so that can cost, our fence alone for our small, usually fence is 30 by 30, it's $5,000. So I made a rough estimate of $25,000. And I have a little budget there. You can see it. The idea is let's create a capital fund where we can go out and we'll advertise. We've had really good luck in the community with getting our name out in terms of people applying to work with us, work for us. So the latest pitch will essentially be like a little mini childcare boot camp where we say, you know, here's the pitch. If you have 16 kids, here's how you can make $100,000 working in your home. You know, if you have 16 kids, multiply by 800, that's, you know, $13,000 a month, and you pay an extra staff person. You can make $100,000 a year. It's a hard work, but it's a really great opportunity, and we can make that easier to do. And so any one of those 16 children, I mean, I think in relative terms, you guys all think in relative terms, you have limited amount of money to allocate. I think the revolving loan fund is a good idea personally, but I think that's 25,000 for one job, right? $25,000 gets us one center up to 16 kids. That's up to 16 jobs. So I think pound for pound childcare is very effective. We requested 50 for two. The trouble with this, like I said, holy grail is that I don't have anyone today who's like, let's do this. So, you know, it'll be a fund. Happy to have some parameters around it where if we don't spend it in a certain amount of time, we can give it back. It'd be earmarked for this purpose and wouldn't go for anything else. But I think having this is, you know, maybe, you know, will help us to create new in-home daycare centers. So let me leave it there. I don't know if I work for my 5 or not.
Only by 30 seconds.
Oh, cool.
Great.
Cool. It's hard to keep track of time when you talk.
Yes.
That's what I found.
Here, yeah. Any questions?
I guess my question would be, wouldn't it be an easy sell to spend $10,000 on yourself if you're gonna make 100?
But if you don't, most people
No,
don't.
but
have to.
is
Oh, yeah,
it
yeah, sure.
possible to create, again, like a loan with your program and not
Oh, sure.
just?
Yeah, my thought was that we would purchase all the equipment and that would take some risk off of them. So if they ended up deciding that they wanted to not pursue it, we would own all the cribs and things like that, and we could then use them in the future. And we could have, you know, say like a permanent thing, like a fence, we could kind of sign a deal with them, or as like, you know, we're not just gonna build people fences for free and things like that are potentially adding to them. But no, you were totally right. Like it's kind of like in some ways like the ADU thing we're gonna go to later after this, which is like, you know, the people that can do it, that have the money to invest, to make more money, you know, they don't want 16 kids in their house. And the people that want the extra income don't have, you know, the incremental capital to put in. The state actually has a program that allows you to get up to $5,000, but that's not enough money. So we'd obviously work with them to get that additional $5,000 too. I just think that we could help incentivize the process by making it $0 upfront. I think that sends a big message. Yeah, I think, up $0 for an individual, like commit to us, we got you, we're gonna help all the paperwork and we're gonna give you staffing support. But no, you're right, like this could happen tomorrow. It's just, it has not been happening. There's a bunch of these in town, but
So you're not giving that $25,000 to an individual per se, you're owning the equipment that's gonna be necessary to start this.
Yeah, I think the implementation that would make the most sense, and we can refine this, would be that we would, our organization would purchase the items for them. You know, we'd work hand in glove with them. There's not a lot of these that are gonna be happening. If we get one, I'll be so excited, you know, because we only have 150 full-time childcare spots in town. And so any one, you know, and you can't grow super fast. We can't change it automatically. And one could go to 16. We would buy all the things. We want to make sure that we're not, you know, like I come from a business background. I want to make sure no one's getting a free lunch, you know, or going to use us in any way that's going to hurt us.
Shaylee has a question.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, my immediate thought would be if they don't have some skin in the game somehow, that are we concerned about then people putting children in their care?
Oh,
I don't know,
yeah.
that's where my head was like.
Yeah,
Like,
so to be clear, like our mission, we have a simple, very focused mission, which is like really important, as many of you probably know if you've ever run an organization, is like, we want to increase availability, right? Affordability and quality. So, yeah, this is not like a warm body in a seat. Yeah, like we'll have to make sure that we're comfortable with, you know, going forward with the person. And that they're serious about it.
Any other questions? Hey, Rob, thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks for sticking it out.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And Linda,
I am Linda Skogren and I'm a board member of Wabi Sabi, and I would have funded every single one of these presentations. So, good luck, you guys. You can pull it up. I don't think you need to see it, maybe towards the end, but,
I'll just keep it on the screen.
okay, thank you. I don't know how many of you know, but Wabi Sabi needs a new home. The property that we have the store at is sold, and we have 2 years, minus a couple months now, because the 2 years were up or started in March, to find a new home, which is gigantic. And so we're in the process of fundraising to make that happen. And so our funding, or we're starting to do that fundraising. We're looking at a permanent space, and we think it's going to have to be land and then building. And we're looking at a total budget of about 3.5 million. That sounds horribly expensive, but one of the things we've learned is that probably a third of the people who use the store walk, ride a bike, and we have several people who come with wheelchairs. So it's got to be near downtown, and you know what that means. It's just a very expensive endeavor. So we are beginning the fundraising process, and maybe you can be one of the first first donors. I'm going to just kind of go to well, here's one of the things we do. We decide each year who our 8 nonprofit partners are. And the people who we have funded this year are Beacon After School, Canyonline Field Institute, Grand Area Mentoring, Mindfulness and Education, Moab Free Clinic, Moab Solutions, Moab Valley Multicultural Center, and the Youth Garden Project. So you guys all know these organizations, and the profits that we make at the store for this year go to them. And so Wabi Sabi helps those organizations do more with the money that they get. And so the first item there is that 23,000 plus goes to our nonprofit partners. Next year, we might choose different ones, but we have 8. So that's part, I think the pitch I'm making here is that we are really supporting the community in multiple ways. The second item that you see, and you maybe can't read it, is we give 62,000 plus in immediate relief vouchers. So people in our community who are really in need go to, for example, the Multicultural Center or Sea Haven and say, I need a coat for my kid to go to school this winter. I need mittens. Sea Haven, it may be that they have to move out of their domestic violence situation, and so we give moving vouchers. So people go to those organizations, come to us, they get free things. They get things they have to have that we can provide. We don't sell it, we give it to them. And I guess if I was to talk about what touches my heart the most, it's that category of 62,000 that goes to the people in our community who are in the most need. We also give 86,000 in discounts to all members of the community. So if you're a member of the Moab community, you get a 10% discount. And as we all know, there's no other store in town that has some of the things that we have. We the last 3 years, we've done a Thanksgiving dinner, and we provide the drivers and the delivery, and Synergy has paid for those meals. So that's something else we've been doing this year. We plan to do the whole big thing again in the Grand Center, for those of you who remember that before COVID. Probably one of the things that people know the least about is that when we get things that are ripped or stained or whatever, we recycle it. We have it picked up by an organization that recycles it. It may go into insulation in a house.
It may go actually to people in India. So we recycle 100,000 pounds of textiles every year that does not go into the landfill. And that's probably our best kept secret. So, we are starting our process of finding a new home. And we are asking for $100,000. And that we would match that $100,000 with funds. We already have an anonymous donor. And we'll be moving forward with all kinds of other efforts to gain that money. I was the board chair for over 3 years. I am convinced that if this organization goes away, it will have a major impact on the community. So we hope we will be successful in finding a new home.
And I just want to let everyone know I am also on the board, so that is my conflict of interest for lobbyists.
So mine is quite short, but I'll entertain any questions.
Can you remind us what the timeline is for your current space?
It's March of 2025, so slightly less than 2 years. So our thinking is the next year we raise the money and the year after we build. It's a crunch.
Yeah.
It's a crunch time, but you also have a lot of credibility as an organization and a lot of advocates in the community. So it should be fun work to raise that money. It'll be hard.
It is.
It'll be hard, but you'll have people who want to help invest in the community in ways that they didn't already know.
Absolutely. And we are already feeling that from the community. People saying, okay, when can I start? When can I donate? Whatever. Well, and we're also hearing you can't go away. You cannot go away.
Any questions? Linda thinks so.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next one, I'm just gonna clarify, it is not attached to Wabi Sabi. There is a couple of our board members that are heading this up, but it is not attached to Wabi.
Is there anything you want to pull up or?
No, I'm just gonna tell a quick little 2 cents about it. We are working on creating a community foundation. What the basic overview is, it's an umbrella with all, hopefully all of the Moab nonprofits coming underneath it. And the hope is that we have less duplication of positions. So we would have like one HR department for a bunch of nonprofits. We'd have one compensation package that would make sense for all the benefits. We have one IT person. We have an immense amount of nonprofits that we feel all have a really important place in our community. But sometimes it's really hard to keep finding these duplicative positions that maybe are only a 10-hour position a week or a month. And so we feel like if we create this foundation, that we could bring all these under. These 2 gentlemen have approached a whole bunch of nonprofits and are getting a lot of good buy-in. And they just are needing basically the startup money to go have an attorney write some bylaws and write some really legal jargon of like how we get people to start communicating and buying into this so that we can begin it. And so they're asking for a grant amount of $25,000 for legal fees and writing those bylaws. Yeah. Have for any questions, but that's what we're creating.
So clarifying question. The term foundation in my mind means an organization that gives away money. So are you intending that this, because what you're describing sounds like a specialized organization that supports not-for-profits.
So Park City does this.
With
right
technical skills.
So Park City does a very similar thing and they call it a foundation. So I'm feeling like maybe it's a slightly ambiguous term, but it also, the hope is that you're gonna have nonprofits that support each other. So if you have nonprofits such as Wabi, they have extremely good cash flow, but don't have like this huge balance sheet of money to be able to go spend 3.5 million on a building. They don't have the land or the space. So by having all these nonprofits under one foundation, they're supporting each other. And so you're gonna have cash flow that helps with one another. You're gonna have people that are gonna be fundraising to the efforts of everybody. So rather than us all hitting up every single big donor in town that needs the tax write-off and loves Moab, we're pooling all that fundraising efforts together for like, oh my gosh, this one needs a good project this year. They have a huge funding need, but maybe in 3 years, they have a different funding need. So it'd be more of like a support system of nonprofits. Might not be a foundation, but that's what we're calling it right now.
But you have a core concept.
Right.
Which is what counts. Okay. Okay, any other questions?
It's not my idea, but I've just been part of the involvement, so it's gonna be an awesome thing.
How many nonprofits do you think it could serve?
I think it could serve the majority of them, honestly, the majority of Moab, depending on how big, like, if it gets big enough, maybe you have 2 HR people in the department rather than 17 small ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think in the long run, what it'll do is it'll free up some of the admin resources for the rest of the community that needs it. And hopefully they get better served and have better benefits. You know, I feel like our nonprofit community doesn't tend to have very good benefits for their employees because they don't have the resources to do so. But if we have full-time employees that are serving multiple nonprofits, then we can do a full benefits package.
Are you pulling your profits then? I mean, or your grants or,
This is why we need an attorney.
Right.
Is to
These are all
help us
questions for the
decipher
attorney.
through some of that stuff, because we don't know what the legalities are. And we need to kind of pull Park City, and we've met with the Salt Lake Community Foundation, Park City Community Foundation. We've met with a lot of people trying to understand what the core concept is, and everyone just keeps saying they need an attorney on board.
The ones that I've worked with and I've seen, they work similar to a co-op, and so there's essentially a fee for all of these partners within that you pay into, and then they provide these services. And so when you're thinking of this foundation, think of it as a co-op for nonprofits, and it actually works very effectively, and it would be really, really good here, actually, because there's so many
That's what we
nonprofits.
keep getting told.
But the other cool part is because we're pulling all the resources, or we're pulling all of the nonprofits together, when we talk about benefits, there's a huge advantage to have a benefits package for all of these people versus 1 or 2. And so there's a huge cost savings as well. And we talk about HR services, you know, one HR service person can serve so many people, whereas it was like 10 hours before or whatever, and it's not really a full-time sustainable job. So it's usually hard for them to fill it. So we were talking about filling those needs and making sure that properly policies and procedures are being followed, because that's something that we
Other people to be helpful with this, so if anybody wants to sign on, they can also help with this.
I think the same model can be duplicated because it's the exact same services, resources approach with the outdoor guide community here, right? Because if they had HR pulling for benefits, 401k, potentially 401k matching. So I think, let's talk.
Okay, yeah. So that's what they're asking for.
Well, you were very persuasive for an idea that's not yours. Okay, we're winding down. We've got 2 more, unless I've lost count.
We have Sea Haven.
We've got Sea Haven, retail, and the arts. So Abby?
Abby, I think
Hello.
you sent me a
Oh.
presentation, is that right?
Not a presentation. I'm sorry, I don't have time for that, but I did write a short proposal.
Yeah. Let me just pull that up. Feel free to start.
Awesome. So my name is Abby Taylor. I'm the executive director of Sea Haven. If anyone is not familiar with Sea Haven, we are a emergency shelter and advocacy center serving primary and secondary victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. It's a big mouthful to explain what we do, but it's really important work. Any given year, we serve between 350 up to 400 individuals in a year. That does include children, and in our emergency shelter, which is what we're known for the most, is we really only serve about up to 100 people. This is nearly doubled in the past handful of years. Back in, I have it on this proposal, but in 2017, we only served 68 people in our emergency shelter. This past year, we served 110 individuals. And due to capacity restraints, 20 people were turned away and 25 people were asked to leave before they found a sustainable long-term solution. But yeah, that in a nutshell is what CKVN does. When I want to talk about our funding a little bit, which I think is really important. CKVN currently for this fiscal year has 13 different government contracts or grants, mostly federal funding, some of it's state funding. The federal funding is managed at a state level. Currently only 11% or less of our funding comes from local sources. This includes local government and fundraising. And in my opinion is a pretty small number, and I hope to have that number increase over the years with increased fundraising efforts and pursuing opportunities like this. When we talk about the economy and interpersonal violence, there are two main things that come up, and one is the experience of economic abuse and how many survivors have limited experience in the workforce or certain skills to operate within the economy in a healthy manner. And the other one is the cost of interpersonal violence to the economy, which the CDC's most current number is $3.6 trillion is the cost of domestic violence in the nation. So those are kind of my two argument points as I request funding and how that what we do here at CKVN can improve the economy here in our region. A couple of things I wanted to point out again for my proposal. Research shows that 28 to 33% of intimate partner homicides, that incident was the first act of physical violence. So things that are non-physical, such as economic abuse, is actually a better indicator of lethality than, say, physical abuse is. Other things to point out from this proposal, in case you didn't read it, is that according to the CDC, risk factors for violence perpetration and victimization, and this is on a personal individual level, includes families experiencing high levels of economic stress, which obviously happens during domestic violence or sexual assault. Protective factors for violence perpetration and victimization includes families where caregivers have steady employment, communities where families have access to economic and financial help, and communities where families have access to nurturing and safe childcare. And I'll be touching on the items that we are requesting support for. If anyone's interested in these things, please go to the CDC, look up adverse childhood experiences. That is where this information is pulled from, a very impactful and important study, at least for our work and what we do. So we request support for 3 different projects. One is incentives and direct aid for financial literacy program. This is support that would, or funding that would directly go to the individuals that go through our Purple Purse curriculum, which is created by the Allstate Foundation. It has been a difficult program to offer to individuals that are in acute crisis or experiencing acute trauma. It feels very superfluous, and people have a really hard time signing up for things that is not absolutely necessary in their lives. So if we have financial incentives to provide to them, not only will they more likely sign up, but they also get to immediately address issues in their lives, immediately become a more productive individual in our economy, and they get to practice what they just learned. The modules cover understanding financial abuse, learning financial fundamentals, mastering credit basics, building financial foundations, and long-term planning. And we're requesting $20,000 for that. that can provide up to $800 in support over 4 months to 25 individuals. I'm really worried about that 5 minutes, so I'm gonna keep going. Childcare payments, that is a second project that we request support for. There are limited childcare slots, and funding is also a considerable barrier for many of our clients, especially as they're working to obtain gainful employment. There are subsidy programs that exist. There are financial aid programs that exist. However, a lot of individuals simply don't have the time or the resources to apply to those, and CKVN has been asked to provide that bridge funding as people are in the process of applying for their subsidy programs. Additionally, people typically need to work before they can apply or receive that funding. So CKVN's been requested, has had financial aids for this specific support numerous times over the years. So again, asking $20,000 for 20 childcare payments, or an average of $1,000 a month. To keep moving on, the third one and the biggest one is requesting funding for our expansion project. We have an 8-bed shelter, and like I said earlier, we provided 110 shelter stays in 2022. It's a really difficult conversation to have with individuals to say, hey, you might need to leave before you're ready. We might need to ask you to leave before you find a sustainable long-term solution. It's even harder to tell someone, I'm sorry, we were just not able to extend your stay any longer because somebody with a more acute situation is coming in. And so it's been a big goal of ours for a long time now to expand our shelter and to increase from 8 beds to a higher target number. I don't have that number because it just really depends on what we're able to do, and so much is going into that expansion project of zoning and conventional, non-conventional use permits and things like that. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but ultimate goal is to increase it and at least double it, that number of beds that we operate. And our expansion goals include increasing the number of beds, but also the development of a small childcare program that's specific to CKVN clients and shelter residents. I'm happy to go into that in more detail if anybody has questions of why CKVN, why it would be beneficial for CKVN to have our own childcare program. But I'm not going to count it against my 5 minutes right now.
We're running out of time now.
Okay, luckily our next door neighbor is selling their house and we're currently under contract. And very simply put, we're asking for the down payment for that house. Square footage is a huge opportunity to pursue for our expansion project, as opposed to buying another property, building, construction costs, things like that. We do have $225,000 saved for expansion efforts. We anticipate going into a capital campaign in the near future, but this is an opportunity that we really want to pursue, and this funding would help us secure a commercial loan to buy this house.
Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you.
Don't apologize. You're doing really important work. Any questions?
I have
Jasmine?
just one quick question. Could you give us an idea of the percentage of the shelter stays that were from Grand County?
From Grand County? That's a great question. County line is really hard, right? So many people are in San Juan County, right over the border. But I'd say it's at least 80%. At least. And that's just off the top of my head. That's something we actually haven't tracked historically that I could pull quickly, but that's an estimate.
Any other questions? Abby, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thanks to Brady, for staying with us for this long. And the award for Iron Men and Women go to the arts advocates who follow.
Right. Well, thank you, Forrest. My name is Randy Martin. I'm the Director of Business Operations for Red Tail Air here in Moab. As everybody's probably aware, SkyWest Airlines has elected not to renew their essential air service contract with Grand County for flights to Denver and Salt Lake City, and will be instead replaced by with Contour Air starting in early October. What we're proposing, what Red Tail Air is proposing to fill that air service need between Moab and Salt Lake City, what we're proposing to partially restore that service is to fly 2-day-a-week service from Moab to Salt Lake City. We have the aircraft, we have qualified, experienced pilots, and we feel we're able to offer this service. We believe at Red Tail that regularly scheduled air service between Moab and Salt Lake City, our state capital, is essential for economic growth and diversification. Without air service, residents, government officials, business leaders are left with two options, right? One is to drive, okay? And we've probably all driven Soldier Summit in December and January. It can get pretty dicey, okay? Or you can still fly. You can fly with Contour, but you're flying to Phoenix, then flying from Phoenix up to Salt Lake City on a different airline, because Contour does not fly to Salt Lake City. So you're flying a separate airline, American, Delta, United, and you're hoping to get that all done in one day, okay? Most likely, it's going to be involve an overnight stay, possibly 3 days, okay? 2 bookings, 2 airlines, a lot of inconvenience. What we're proposing is early morning flight, Moab to Salt Lake City, and a late afternoon, early evening flight, Salt Lake City to Moab. So you can get up there, you can attend your meetings, you can get to your appointments, whatever you need to do up in Salt Lake City, you can get up and back in a day. We know there's a need for this service. Okay, we get contacted frequently from residents, from business leaders in the community who need to get to Salt Lake City for meetings, who want to do it on a day that Delta isn't flying, or a day that, or in the wintertime when Delta isn't providing service to Salt Lake City. So we get contacted frequently. We're doing anywhere from 2 to 3 charters a month for these people who need to get to Salt Lake City. So we know there's a demand there for this service. Our target market is residents of Grand County who need to get to Salt Lake City, government leaders, like I said earlier, and business leaders, okay? We're not targeting tourists, okay? We feel tourists are better served by the service that Contour Air offers to Phoenix. They have that interline agreement with American Airlines, where once they get to Phoenix, they can connect pretty much anywhere in the world. So we're not targeting tourists. This is for the residents of Greene County, and it's for government leaders, government officials, and business leaders here in our county. We feel, again, having an easy way to fly between Grand County, Moab, and Salt Lake City and back is essential for economic growth and investors, investors who will bring capital to Grand County, investors who will create jobs in Grand County. We believe that having this scheduled air service is a driver for economic growth and diversification here in our county. So the SkyWest contract expires on June 30th. However, the DOT contract that SkyWest has with SkyWest requires them to stay until a new air service provider is set up in Grand County. Okay. However, just recently, SkyWest is starting to make starting to say, hey, we don't have pilots. We don't know if we're going to be able to provide service after July 1st. So we're prepared, okay, Red Tail Air is prepared to start this service in July, in early July. We can start to market it if SkyWest comes back, and this is only 5 weeks away. If SkyWest does come back and say, hey, we're sorry, we know we have a contract, we just can't provide, we can't provide the service anymore. we're prepared to step in with marketing efforts immediately and with regular scheduled flights starting in early July, if that should happen. And we're happy to work with you guys. To create marketing, okay, for this project and with the travel council. And I'm committed to make this successful. Okay, it's my project. I'm taking ownership of it at Red Tail. I wanted to make it successful. We're starting with 2-day-a-week service, and my hope is, okay, that there'll be enough demand where we can grow to 3, 4, 5-day-a-week service.
The total request of that. It's in here, but
Yes,
$95,000.
correct.
And what all
$95,000.
did that do?
Yeah.
And then-
Sure, yeah, good question. So, myself and 3 other people in the company ran the numbers on this 2-day-a-week service, Moab, Salt Lake City. Our cost, $190,000. And that's where we came up with the $95,000, 50% participation. Now, we're taking a risk. Okay, we're not asking the county to pay for all this. Okay, obviously, we're taking a risk. We need to hit a certain number of passengers per flight to make up our $95,000 that we're taking the risk on. If, for example, if we only get 1 person a flight, 2 people a flight, we're gonna take a loss. The $95,000 contribution from the county helps mitigate our risk. Yes.
If you were to get this grant, what is the time commitment Red Tail is willing to give to do these flights? Like if you only get 1 passenger flight, how long
So-
until you?
Yeah, we're committed for 1 year. Okay, we will guarantee air service for 1 complete year. If it starts July 1st, we'll commit for 1 full year. And the other thing we're committed to is the ticket price. $150 one way, $300 round trip. That's very competitive with Delta's current pricing. And we're committed to that price for 1 year.
So essentially, this is startup capital to pay for empty seats as you run up,
Right,
build your client base.
exactly.
And then that would be the guaranteed 2 flights a week as well.
Correct.
The other piece of that.
And again, if we see that this is successful, if we're selling out every single flight, absolutely, we're gonna add more flights.
Is the expectation that if you get the seed capital to expand the service and you commit to a year, have you run the pro forma to see what the profitability is then of making it a sustainable, profitable service?
No,
You're not gonna hit that.
no.
Okay.
Good question. So no, we have not, we've only been focused on the 2-day-a-week service.
Got it.
We haven't run numbers yet on a 3-day, 4-day,
Got
5-day
it.
service.
But potentially it could at some point be a service that you could offer profitably.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
That's what I was
the hope,
asking.
right?
I should have asked
Yeah,
that
that's
in a
the
simpler way.
hope.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Is there a path to profitability if you take the seed and then you have the year to be able to build and add
Oh,
on to that
absolutely.
service?
Yes.
You feel like there's a path to profitability?
Yes.
And it's just an 8-passenger.
8 passenger, actually, it's 9 seats. There's a co-pilot seat that we could sell also.
So premium for window seat.
Exactly. We, yes, or the co-pilot seat, right?
And what about, those, like, in
Luggage.
summertime, yeah, like.
Yeah, so it's something we do have to manage. Okay, we ask for passenger weights as part of our reservation process. And if the passenger weights start to get to a certain level, then we cut back on the number of seats. We do that currently.
But if your
So-
target event tourism, you may. not
Exactly,
have
so
that.
we don't expect, the 35, 40 pounds of luggage that Contour can expect with their passengers.
But working at the airline, like I did, I mean, it was 90% non-residents who made it viable to fly here. So, I mean, I'm just curious how many.
Sure, so we can comfortably sell 8 tickets, fly 8 passengers with 35 to 40 pounds of luggage year round.
No bicycles.
On top.
No bikes, yeah,
Take
no
your
bikes. Yeah, for shift bikes, right? Yeah,
I'll rent them.
yeah. All right, for you.
And then
Exactly.
what about, so with, the EAS, is there, you can only have one service, is that correct?
So
Could you
we're
guys
exploring
apply?
that. We're exploring that with Tammy Helen. She's talked to her Department of Transportation representative. And so currently, you're right, the regulation is written so that there's only one EAS contract per airport, let's say.
Right.
However, there is the possibility that they could amend that, okay? And we're actually exploring the possibility. We're focused on this now. We want to get it up and running. However, we want to also look at that EAS contract and see if there's a possibility we could fall under that to provide air services to Salt Lake City. She's talked to DOT. They said it's never been done before, but doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It would have to go through multiple layers of approvals and legal review and such, which would take months and months and months, which is why we haven't started that process right now, because we don't want to interfere in any way with the Frontier Air contract that's currently under review with DOT. We don't want DOT to get confused with, oh, what, we've got this one and now we got this new one, and all of a sudden there's delays, right? We really want to get, especially if SkyWest is going to pull out on July 1st, we want to get Frontier here as soon as possible, not risk any delay.
It's a great concept.
Thank
It's a
you.
great concept, and it's been done before in other larger cities. Especially in cities where large corporations had people they had to send somewhere. And we're having a hard time getting service,
Mhm.
and they just committed to buying empty seats for a year,
Right.
and they only had to do it for 2 weeks. So,
Wow, that's great. And that would be the hope here. Yeah.
Quick question. You haven't really spoken to Tammy's involvement or kind of interest from the airport perspective.
Mhm.
And then the long-term potential of, potentially building a niche as a provider of small community connector flights. We have airports, Vernal, Cedar City, and St.
Sure,
George.
yeah,
That
yeah,
like
yeah.
a potential long-range outcome of this, which I think that is a potential real sell for this from an economic diversification standpoint. Red Tail Air can become a regional kind of provider of this type of service.
And we're just now starting to explore that. We had a great meeting with the airport manager from Vernal last Friday, and then he flew down here on Monday. He was that excited about the possibility. So Canyon Lines Regional Airport is not the only one in the state that lost EAS services, Salt Lake City or Denver. Cedar City is in that same position as is Vernal. So we're just now starting to explore can we provide air service to not only Salt Lake City, but between Vernal and Salt Lake City, or Cedar City and Salt Lake City, Moab and St. George. Denver Air built this model a number of years ago, and they fly to a number of different communities within a 500-mile range. We're just now starting to explore that possibility and see if we can do something like that. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort, but a great question, and yeah, that's a vision that we're just starting to.
And from the airport board's perspective, yes, he's already explored this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that was clear to the public.
All right.
Randy, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now,
I turn
the
to
Art Council. To begin with, a disclaimer, I am a member of this board, but I am a non-voting member. And I am on the commission, but this, if we get this monies, it will be managed through the Art Council, not, I won't have anything to do with it. I'm just the person that's, one of the people that's pushing this idea. I had a whole bunch of reasons that I was going to talk about how important arts are for economic development. It's extremely important. There's been many studies done that show if you focus on art and you increase art in a community, it increases the economic development of the community by bringing people into town and by giving people that are in town jobs. I can send the statistics and such, but rather than going through those worrying statistics like I was planning, I'll keep it short like that. Investing in art is investing in economic development. And it can be proven. The other thing that has been proven over and over again is you only get what you put your money into. It happened earlier on in my career as commissioner When Chris Barrett said, if we want a university in this town, if we want a satellite, we need to put money in that direction. We've been talking about it for 30 years at least. Nothing happened. Minute we put money towards it, boom, we have a campus. Happened with Arroyo Crossing. We were ready to pull our hair out. I thought it was going under. The board was ready to, they couldn't do it. How can you ask a volunteer board like the Arts Council to manage $1 million project or to pull things together? The minute the county said, let's pay for an administrator to manage Arroyo Crossing, look at it now. Within a year after getting an administrator, what happened? Grant County already has a strong base for arts. We have the art trail, we have 2 art festivals, we have 2 music festivals, we have plein air, I'm just touching the surface of what goes on in Moab. We have a couple galleries, 3 galleries. We need more galleries to make this a destination for people who are art connoisseurs. And so the proposal that the Art Council wants is to have the monies to hire an art administrator. A person who is somewhat like the other, that works with the organizations that are already in place and then expands upon that. Figures out other ways, finds grants and monies to come into town to really bring in the arts. It will bring the type of tourists that will really help Grand County, because it will be the tourists that will come here to spend money and spend lots of money. And it will help many of our artists in our community be able to market their products, be able to sell their products, and to be able to bring people to see their products, both visual arts, music, and theatrical. And so we're asking, the Art Council has already gone through the process of developing a job
Description.
Thank you. Job description. And so we have that. We also know people in town who are ready to jump on board and take this challenge. And so we're asking, we'd come down with a real clear number once we know we can do it, of $60,000 to $80,000 to give a person a good living wage, somebody that would want this job and do that job. And we also have the Art Council who would be in charge of this employee, and we also now have the RAP tax to help with it. The beauty of this, it will pay for itself in time.
How much?
This will pay for itself in time.
Yeah.
Because
How much time?
I would say a year or 2, but I think if we got the seed money, we could find other money. That person could find the grants. That person could get the money. We're only looking at least I'm only looking at this as a one-time ask. And so we're asking, we could be more specific, but we're wanting $60,000 to $80,000 to start the process of advertising and hiring a person to be an art administrator in this community to enhance diversity, economic diversification, and not only diversification, but attracting quality, all tourists, good people. They're not all are good people, but what I'm saying, the type of tourists that will enhance our community's economy.
Then the Arts Council would be the employer.
That's a registered nonprofit.
They're here. We're here if you have questions.
Okay, questions? Karen, then Jamie.
What's the proposal of where this person will be housed?
We don't. At this point, we're looking at the Mark, the Grand Center, this is the beginning stage, but until we know we have some monies in order to start advertising. And for a while, perhaps it will be a person who works outside their home. that could be a possibility too. Or under the umbrella of another organization.
My only thought, and this is probably me playing devil's advocate, because I agree with what you're saying, that art is gonna drive people here. But from what I know of the employees of the Mark, that's literally what they do, is grant writing for this stuff and bringing arts together and helping all this coordination. So like, are we just duplicating efforts a little bit? It sounds like you're
Absolutely not.
talking
If you want
about.
me to answer that.
Yeah,
the she's, the city and the ladies of the Mark.
Identify yourself.
I'm Teresa King. At this point in time, I'm on the Arts Council Board. I've been on the board for many years. And Kemma Johnson is one of our more recent board members on the Arts Council. And we have talked to the ladies of the Mark and the city, and they have all they can handle. They do not, they have said, this is all we can do. We cannot do any more. And we have said to them, there is so much more to do. There is so much more to do. This is like low hanging fruit to connect all these different things that are going on in town. There are so many grants and stuff available, but I'm not looking for a job. Okay, I need, but I see all these things out there, and I understand all of these different things that you guys are doing. We can tie them all together. I mean, to me, it's so clear how you can tie all these things together. If there are grants available, somebody just needs to write them and to make these things happen, and work in conjunction, of course, with the city and their department and what they're doing. But I see it, to me, it's clear, but I'll answer.
It's an efficiency gain. Thanks.
Melissa, do you have a question?
Okay, not sure who I'm directing the question to, but I would direct it to both of you. If you had this person and they were able to focus their time, would they be willing to, or do you feel like it would be worthwhile for them to look at things, for example, that are off-season destination experiences, events, winter? I'm thinking about the tourism industry that has that same opportunity cost and that lag time during the winter when we don't have a lot of festivals,
Which there are a
events.
lot of those things that have happened off and on in the past. And it's a matter of just either resurrecting them or doing some new ones, or, and that's all included in the kind of the job description, is to ferret out and inventory, you know, everything that's going on, and let's build it up. There are businesses in town that could hire, could house this office, not, you know, without any cost for a period of time, because someone has done that for many, many years in town. So, just saying. Get their own room, you know?
What you're really talking about is a catalyst for connecting all the people in that ecosystem, all the people who are involved in the arts of all varieties, literary, theater, etc. And then developing a strategy for a program for bringing more activities, having people better connected one with another within the community. That's the goal of that position.
And then to work with like the travel council so that it can be put on, you know, Discover Moab and put in our advertisements that come to Moab, there's going to be the plein air expedition, or there's going to be sculpture doing these or there's going to be this and that and all this stuff for sale, and it'll fill up, you know, that the best time to do that would be in the winter, because these types of people that would be coming to it probably wouldn't be coming as much for the outdoors. They would be coming for the outdoors, still, it's so beautiful the weather, my favorite time, but it would be, you know, a draw in addition. So I see it as a very strong economic driver for this community that will bring people to the community, plus employ the people that are already here and probably entrepreneurs, and bring in more. Yes.
Is there any chance in August, or you, Mary, might know the answer to this, that this could be funded out of TRT money post-July? Sounds to me like it might be considered tourism promotion. And I understand you could think of it as diversification too. I'm not suggesting you couldn't put it that in that basket, but
This money was available now, so that's why we were asking for it. This is the time period But we are talking about meeting with the travel council.
Great.
We were gonna have a presentation for the travel council to talk to them about putting it in their budget for TRT and finding out if that's even something that the TRT, there's
There's a
so
question
tricky
mark
with
as to whether or not
how
it's
you
possible.
spend promotional money.
Okay.
A portion, we might be able to justify a portion of that for promotion, that they spend a portion of their time promoting the activities in Moab.
You can wordsmith this so it can work either way, and that's why I thought it was a great bet. That no matter what you do, it's still gonna qualify for what you have going on, and you just decide on what side of the ledger that you want it. But I think the time is right, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh,
I
it's
haven't
very
worked in this field non-profit wise, non-paid wise for many years, but I just think the timing is right. The ability, we just wanted to start the discussion, and we started this many months ago, and that, so
We started writing,
back in
the job
January at
description,
least, and we were ready to start interviewing people, and then we thought we better have some money in hand.
You know, the research on turn travel is that cultural travelers, people interested in the arts and heritage and history, typically spend more time in a community on their visits to particular communities.
And more money,
Pardon?
and more money.
Therefore, more money. Exactly. So this is both a tourism and a diversification appeal. So. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you,
Can I keep it
Teresa.
under 5 minutes?
No.
You tried. You did you made a valiant effort.
I did do mine.
So we are good. We are through all of the applicants. And it's now time for us to talk about next steps moving forward. And if there were some of you who thought there was going to be a decision coming out of this meeting, we disappoint you. Because,
It wasn't on the agenda.
because we do have more deliberations to go through for the advisory board to make its recommendations to the commission and have a work session at the next meeting, which I think is sometime next week.
Yeah, I can speak to that
Please.
stuff. So obviously, I don't think it's feasible for the body right now to like take all of this in and make a prioritization and a recommendation in this meeting. I don't think they're ever going to be possible today. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, the kind of two big next possibilities for the commission to take this up for deliberation and action are at the June 6th meeting, so it's not next week, the week after that. And then the kind of last call is June 20th. And so what myself and Commissioner Admin have discussed is bringing an initial recommendation to the commission at their 6th meeting, giving them enough time to, if they wanted to have more clarification or follow up on pieces of that and to finalize contracting, to bring that back at the 20th meeting. And so what that leaves us is how do we actually go forth with a decision to make a recommendation? Does the Economic Development Board want to make that recommendation? Should we, Forrest and I had spoken about the potential to create just a smaller subcommittee that could meet and put an initial recommendation together. This body does not meet until the end of June, well after all of these important things take place. So the options on the table really are a focused subcommittee to meet with myself to put together, here's our kind of initial recommendation based off of everything we heard in this meeting. If we wanted the Economic Development Board at large to kind of put an official, we meet in person and stamp of approval on that, that would have to happen. We'd have to schedule a special meeting of this board in order to do that. If just resolve to let whoever's in that subcommittee or staff, for example, just kind of present, here's everything on the table. Here's a couple ways you can cut this so it fits within the anticipated budget. I'd be happy to do that. But it's kind of up. There's no perfect way. It's gonna require extra work by and the extra meetings, no matter what. This board is not like required by statute to make a recommendation on these. It could just be, we've received these proposals. Staff can take these recommendations, make a couple different ways you could cut it and bring that to the county commission.
Is the commission expecting a recommendation at all from us, or?
We always listen to the recommendations, just because we know you've had the presentations given to you.
Right.
That they, or myself, many of them will go and listen,
To the minutes.
to listen to the presentations. But, yeah, they take the recommendations from the advisory committees very seriously.
I thought so.
The other kind of wrinkle is I'm on vacation next week, so I'm able to.
You have time this week?
Next week. I could.
What about our chair? Are you available next week if we needed to call a special meeting?
Or this week?
The best time for me, if we wanted to, if like one or two people wanted to say, I'm willing to spend a couple hours on this. I have availability on Friday of this week, and could at least put some prioritization together. Not make a final recommendation, but get that ball moving, and then that group could figure out exactly what the next steps look like.
I think our role as a board is to actually make recommendations.
Yeah.
So, I think what August is suggesting is we have a working group that essentially acts on behalf of the board to come up with a priority list that then we could have that then a special meeting of the full board could review and have it ready to go to for the working session on June 6th. Is that right?
Yeah, so what, if we wanted to do that, then you'd have to, the Economic Development Board would have to have a special meeting next Tuesday. Because
without me,
I'm fine, I can do whatever work I can do on Friday, but that would have to be done because the agenda summaries for the 6th meeting have to be done next Wednesday. So if that's the timeline, we do a work session on Friday, the Economic Development convenes in my absence on Tuesday, and I can provide forth whatever information you need. And then that way, staff then put an agenda summary together on the 31st, so that can be brought to the county commission for at least initial consideration on the 6th. Kind of in a workshop setting, there is an HDHO workshop on the 6th, so from a workshop standpoint, there's not a whole lot of time, but you could present I think you present a discussion item with an initial recommendation, have the commission look at that and say, we really like this, we want more of this and not of this one. And then we would then take the intervening 2 weeks to actually firm up contract agreements so that on the 20th, the county commission can say, actually, yes, legally to contract. So it's a lot of work in a very short amount of time, but we really don't have a choice.
I mean, I guess one just process-wise thought that I have is that for all of us, I mean, we've all spent all this time like considering these proposals very seriously, reading about them and listening to these presentations. And I think it might be useful for us to then, if there's going to be a subcommittee, instead of having that just be the next step, having all of us who aren't going to be there provide via email, I mean, if you want to, suggest feedback from everything we've had, so that then I just feel like then it's gonna be more useful instead of like 3 people trying to make a decision and then getting approval from the group,
This is why it took literally
funneling it down.
3 full days of conversation for the original grant.
Yeah.
From a legal perspective, is that a problem if we're deliberating over email?
Not if we're just providing like individual input, that so long as that's captured. And that is in public. I think that.
If you're not making a decision and you're just offering your opinion, that is not considered conflict because you're not trying to come up with a vote. You're saying, this is my points of view to be considered.
So like if you were to send to August, here's my thoughts
Just
on every project.
if you do it
then
individually
you
and
can
not
provide it to
group,
the
would probably
subcommittee.
be
So,
clearer.
and that doesn't have to be a public
Yeah,
comment. Right.
I guess
Another
here-
option of just having a special meeting
Yeah.
next Tuesday and all of us have this discussion
That's
together.
exactly what I was gonna say, and then I can do, that gives me time to, Chris can be there, for example. I volunteer, that's true.
That's voluntolding.
Yeah. And then I can spend the time to actually put this all into a spreadsheet with all of the request amounts. So it's all right there. There, we might not have final clarity on the total amount yet, just because we still have to do some math on that, when I get back, but, at the very least, that, I think that's probably the way to go, in the public meeting, make a deliberation, and probably just rank them priorities and say, this is a way that this could work.
And the amounts almost seem to, like, they have to be tentative because.
Yeah,
we've
they
got-
have to
Yeah,
we
we
don't
can
know.
say like this amount, and this is the highest priority, and
And would it also be possible if you have a line item to include who has received funds?
Yeah,
and
we can include that.
Now, the other question I would have is all of the requests, that I had a magic wand there to give it all,
Sure.
but some of the requests were a real stretch, or an extreme stretch and falling under the purview of economic development.
diversification,
Diversification.
and all fund is found in development for diversification.
Yeah, the funding that this is supposed to go to. So that's, I don't wanna get slapped.
Yeah.
Have in the past.
Well,
I heard the
We're
same
practicing slack.
thing as I was listening to the presentations and the proposals, and some of the ones that I most felt were probably the furthest stretch, and I was almost thinking maybe of creating a matrix where you could say direct economic diversification impact, indirect economic diversification impact, and no diversification impact. Just to kind of create a decision-making matrix to be able to say, we'll look at them that way. Because some of them would have an indirect impact. Some of them are gonna directly drive results that are measurable. And then some of them really just don't play in that field, which is why I'm asking about rural grants and what are the things are available.
what I can make sure y'all have available during that meeting is the legal definitions of economic diversification. I can ask Stephen if he can potentially be there, just be like the legal advisor. Have Chris be there as well. And the legal definition of the rural county plan. And then, just so that that's super clear and in reference.
What like time of day do you think Tuesday we would be?
Right.
That's up to you guys.
No, I'm probably on my way back from Colorado.
That'll be
that day,
Tuesday the 30th. It's the day after the Memorial Day.
I'm not gonna be, but I'm not gonna be able to do it. I haven't had my surgery that day, but I'll get another.
What about like voting members?
The
Yeah,
afternoon,
what do you guys think?
I teach that day, but I'm done by
I can
2.
make
so
it work whenever.
Afternoon.
I mean, the 3 to 5 time is the easiest for us because we already scheduled
So
that.
normal.
Let me check if this room is available.
And then August, just to be super clear.
Yeah.
It's economic diversification and development or just
So I
diversification?
can show you what the actual definition is. It's economic diversification activity, which is defined as anything, it's very broad. Legally, from a statutory standpoint, it's low likelihood we get slapped for this. It's anything that's reasonably similar to or an extension of existing state economic development or state of Utah activities.
Okay.
So if any of these are a reasonable extension of a state program that already exists, then it's gold. There is not a clear, despite what kind of happened in the legal arguments at the state capitol, there's not a clear like mandate in this code as to what diversification is. There's conversations around maybe being ambiguous locally, what the priorities were, whether the programs that were funded were kind of under that ambiguous definition, right? And so from a legal standpoint, it's pretty wide open. Funding's already going away in July, on July 1st. I think that ultimately it's the commission's call to make that, but I'll make sure that you have all the legal guidance. The definition that was used for economic diversification, the STAR grant program. But I think there's a fair amount of like wiggle room for this. I think whatever this board comes up with as a funding recommendation is going to be a good one with all of that information.
Well, I'd say I just hope I'm helpful because I was on the STAR grant committee, but obviously we got slapped for that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not helpful. I felt like we did our best.
I was told
So anyway, I'm going to check, it should be coming up right now. Oh, it's not working on this. Here. I'll check over here.
So while he's doing that, Tuesday, the 30th, what time are people?
3 to 5.
Sounds like we're aiming for 5.
3 to 5, that work?
Let me just double check this. Okay, so the chamber should be available, so I'll just put a quick hold on that. And I'll follow up with Forrest to make sure that we get all of this stuff locked in.
Someone will be here and I'll have it recorded.
I'll make sure
And to
somebody.
do this, because chances are if I make it, it's.
It might be happening for CanCon admins. Okay. The agenda. Forrest, call it.
Richard?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thanks, Abby. Thank you again.